Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything related to sports, classic debates, hot topics, and we give you a fresh perspective on sports and how we see it. And today's topic, the question is, should Kawhi Leonard ask the Clippers to make this particular trade right now? So that's the topic I want to get into in today's video. But before we get into that, I want you guys to please make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. And also be sure to check out this show on the Dreamerspro Podcast, which we have linked in the description below. So please make sure you go ahead and check that out. With that being said, let's just get straight into the content here. Now, all of you guys know that the season is over. We have a champion, and it's the Los Angeles Lakers, and congratulations to them on LeBron James for picking up his fourth title. And his, so it was, now he has 4 NBA championships and 4 finals MVPs. So congratulations to them for winning that championship. But all of you guys know that Kawhi Leonard is my favorite player, at least for you guys who have been on the channel. If you guys are new to the channel, Kawhi has always been my favorite player currently playing basketball. And I had picked the Clippers to win the NBA title this season, and obviously that did not materialize for reasons that we are all fully aware of. Now, we all know that Kawhi Leonard was fresh off a championship last season. He decided that he wanted to go play with the Clippers this season, and he decided that his running mate that he really wanted to run with was going to be Paul George. However, what's important to note here is that prior to him coming to LA, we also heard that he tried to recruit Jimmy Butler, and this was also verified on Undisputed when they did an episode when they did a segment covering that piece, covering the fact that Kawhi Leonard tried to recruit Jimmy Butler first. However, obviously he wasn't successful. Now, what ended up happening? He ended up getting Paul George, and that was his man for that's the guy he ended up rolling with for the season, because that's who he got. Now, for the regular season, Paul George averaged 21.5 points a game, 5.7 rebounds, and 3.9 assists. If you look at Jimmy Butler averaged 19.9 points, so to say 20 points a game, 6.7 rebounds, and 6 assists. But what we just understood about stats is stats don't tell the entire story, because stats do not capture intangibles, they do not capture leadership, and most importantly, they don't capture competitiveness. Stats tell you nothing about these 3 things, and in this particular instance, if you looked at these numbers, you would quickly assume that, Paul George is a better player, just looking at the raw data and saying, well, he's a better player, right? If you don't watch basketball games, you don't look at games in context or anything, you just say, okay, this was the better player. Now, if we look at Kawhi Leonard for the season, he averaged 27 points, 7.1 rebounds, and 4.9 assists. So clearly, he's the better player here, but not just by the numbers, because Kawhi gets better in the playoffs. Last season, he averaged 30 points, 9 rebounds, and 3.9 assists in the playoffs. This season, he averaged 28 points in the playoffs, shot 50% from the field, got you 9.3 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and 2.3 steals. So he was sensational this year in the playoffs. However, this is what happened. So they got Paul George. Paul George was inconsistent all throughout the regular season, as we know this, because of his ankle injury. He had a shoulder surgery. Then throughout the season, he had some other knick-knack injuries, so that caused him not to play the entire season. Anyway, we had the shutdown in the season because of this global pandemic that we all experienced. Season started up again. There were about 8 regular season games to play, and Paul George had all this rest that he needed to sort of lick his wounds and get healthy. When he came back into the bubble for those 8 games, the guy was averaging 25.5 points a game and shooting over 50% from the 3. And I looked at him and I said, man, this guy looks healthy, and he looks like he's going to have a great showing in the playoffs. And what happened? In the playoffs, you all know, Paul George was one of the most inconsistent star players in the playoffs. For the playoffs, he ended up averaging 20 points a game. He shot 40% from the field, which is really poor. He shot 90% from the free throw line, which is pretty good. He got you 6.1 rebounds and 3.8 assists and 1.5 steals. However, he had a 5-point drop-off. But it just wasn't the points. If you watch Paul George in those playoffs, I think he played great defense. Sure, he played great on-the-ball defense. I thought he played great team defense all throughout the playoffs. However, there were times that you watched him in those series where you knew that the moment his shot was not going down, he would completely lose his, let's say, his confidence, and all of a sudden he would just start deferring or not shooting at all, which is something that the Clippers could ill afford to have in the playoffs. And it was something that I assume Kawhi Leonard had no idea was going to happen. At least I didn't. That's why most of the NBA world picked the Clippers to win the title. Most of us did, right? Most people did. And most of us obviously were wrong because no one, could see that Paul George would underperform to that degree in the playoffs. And obviously, I've mentioned it in the past, but I'm going to mention it again, how Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell were averaging close to 36 points a game in the regular season coming off the bench, and in the playoffs they were averaging around 20 points, so you had a 16-point drop-off in their production. Let's not forget that fact that these guys didn't show up as well, and Kawhi had his worst game probably in his career in that Game 7, and that's why they lost. But if you look at his production overall in the playoffs, the entirety of the playoffs, the guy was averaging 28 as I said, he was averaging 28 points a game and got you 9 rebounds and 5.5 assists. So the guy, Kawhi Leonard, played his part. Now, the season is over, right? The season is over, and it is what it is, and the Lakers are crowned the champions. Now, the question is, looking into next season, can the Clippers pull off this trade and get Jimmy Butler? Because Jimmy Butler has proved, number one, that he is a reliable teammate. He is a leader, and he's probably, and we're going to do another episode on this, which we're going to cover in another episode shortly. He's probably the biggest competitor in all the NBA. No one, after watching that series between the Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Lakers, seeing how overmatched the Heat were, especially from a talent standpoint, personnel standpoint. Their number one scoring player, offensive player, wasn't even available. Think about that. He wasn't even available. Bam Adebayo was also in and out of the lineup here and there. And Jimmy Butler just put that team on his back and just basically told them, listen, we're not going to lose. And he was able to really just, fight, just claw away 2 wins from the Lakers and made it a competitive series. Otherwise, it was going to be a sweep. But he was able to really fight back in Game 3 and Game 5 and really make it, an interesting series. And no one can walk away from that series thinking that Jimmy Butler is not one of the greatest competitors or if not the greatest competitor in basketball currently playing. If you just saw what the Miami Heat, did. Now, talking about reality, number one, let's talk about contracts. Paul George is being paid about $30-something million a year to Jimmy Butler's $16 million a year. So contract-wise, they don't match up. They don't have similar contracts, number one. So it's going to be really hard. So if you're going to try to get Paul George, Paul George, the Miami Heat are probably going to need to throw in another player, which I don't think they would be willing to do, number one. Number two, I think it's going to be virtually impossible to get this trade, although we've seen crazy things happen in the NBA, like when Kwame Brown was traded, I believe, for Pau Gasol at one point, a number of years ago. I think it was in 2008, the 2008 season, they got him, and all of a sudden, the Lakers are going to the NBA Finals back-to-back for 3 straight years because they were able to pull out that heist, and we all remember that. And most people were like, how the hell did this trade go down? So we've seen crazy things happen in the NBA. Do I think it will happen? No. Do I think that the Clippers should try? You better believe it. If they can, they should definitely try to pull that trade off and get away and ship out Paul George. Now, I've been hearing that Paul George is going to be traded. That's what I've been hearing. But for who, I don't know. Obviously, his market value is really, really low right now, given how he performed. But he does still have that $33 million contract that some team out there has to find a way to match. So I don't know. But for me, I think if they can do it, these guys should really push and try to pull off this trade. So what I want to know from you guys is, what do you think? Do you think that this is a possibility, or do you think we're just reaching, for pulling at straws here? Do you think this is just no way something like this will go down? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. And also, we're going to link another video here at the end of this video, if you haven't seen it already, where we talk about whether or not Kawhi Leonard should have stayed stay with the Toronto Raptors. So you guys can check that out if you haven't already. Once again, this is Charles here from Dreamerspro. Wishing you guys an amazing day. Peace.